Mrs Anne Main.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's a pleasure to borrow the Honourable Lady for Haywood and Middleton. And there's been touching on in this debate so far, which has been a very good-humoured debate, which is such a pleasure to be in because I'm fed up with this place at the moment. But it's been mentioned about beer duty. Can I say that I do declare an interest that the headquarters of CAMRA is in my constituency, and they are at the forefront of the campaign on beer duty. But I want to focus on pub business rates, because I have to say, generally speaking, these days, Madam Deputy Speaker, you don't go to the pub to get drunk. You go to the pub for so many other things, Madam Deputy Speaker, as I'm sure you do yourself. But we all like to go to the pub. Some of them run mini libraries. Some of them run toys libraries. Some of them have campaigns to support local people in need or to help charities. They have darts matches. They're a focal point for many people who have nowhere else to meet up with friends and. I think, as I say, mentioning celebrations with relatives and things as well. So a pub is so much more than just the price of the liquid in the glass, and I think we've really got to get that over, which is why I want to focus on the premises that the liquid is served in. And whilst I think a reduction in beer duty would be good, speaking as a wine drinker myself, I really want to focus on why we can keep these pubs in business for somewhere for us all to go. And I have taken part in the previous debate that we had on this in Westminster Hall, which was a very well-attended debate. And I have to say that I am trying to get to meet with the Financial Secretary of the Treasury to raise this important issue, and I have brought some of my pubs and landlords in to meet with the Minister, who's on the front bench now. But the reality is they do not feel there is a real awareness of the much welcomed reduction in business rates that came through is not going to reach all the parts that other beers can't reach. It's actually, in my constituency, only reaching a mere 50% of the pubs on average. Many of the pubs have contacted me with this massive hike in business rates that they have had. They are having to cut staff or close their businesses altogether, and that cannot be the message that the government intended to send out. As many people have commented on, the beer and pub industry, of course.
Of course, this is not the first time we've had a debate about pubs. You can go back a number of years in actual fact, but we never seem to make very much progress in relation to the taxation of the pubs. And the other area that's affected pretty bad is actually working men's clubs. A lot of them are dying out now. So I think it's very important that the Treasury have a good look at this and see whether or not they can actually help pubs. Because at the end of the day, they are part of a community. Communities like a catalyst round them. So I think the Honourable Lady's on the right track, actually.
I'm pleased you made a very valuable intervention. I'm pleased you mentioned about the community aspect. Because, of course, some pubs threatened with closure are taken on as community assets. But the reality is it is incredibly hard to make the business case with the business rates the way they are. No matter how willing the community is, there's only so many pints of beer anyone can drink in a pub to help provide the income that pub needs. Unless we want to encourage people to be blotto night and day, what we're having to say is the business model workable? And for many pubs, it just is not workable. And a cut of 33% in business rates with a rateable value of under £51,000 was a major step, but in areas like St Albans, it's not having the impact. A high property value areas like St Albans means that we're being almost totally overlooked. Many people have mentioned heritage and beautiful buildings. Pubs in my area are under a huge threat to be turned into domestic properties, and that is a real worry. They are struggling at this cliff edge, and we've got to address it now. The 2017 business rates forming for pubs use a methodology for setting the rateable value based on fair, maintainable trade. Nobody seems to understand how that works, because the rateable value is driven mainly by the pub turnover, and it takes into account property valuations. So that means even small pubs, such in St Albans, are having huge hikes in business rates because they happen to be settled in amongst much higher domestic properties. So the formula doesn't take that into account. So it penalises small business operators, and an honourable member on the backbench mentioned about microbreweries. It also penalises the independents, which I think is a real problem, that we lose some of those quirky pubs on our high street that offer that level of interest and difference, that prove to be a huge pull for tourists that come into areas like St Albans, who appreciate pubs like the Boot, like the Fighting Cocks, many of whom have historic backgrounds and trace their way back and have architecture to match, but make them very difficult to expand or make them very difficult to increase the footfall because they're historically extremely small. So, the Save the UK Pubs have compiled a very useful document that outlines the increases in pubs face, and I've given this to the Minister before, but in case he's lost them, I'll send them off to him again, because the Boot, which I have just mentioned, is a tiny heritage pub. I mean, absolutely tiny. Some people have got bigger sitting rooms than the pub I'm mentioning. They reckon they'd have to sell an additional 22,000 pints to cover the additional £51,000 in business rates they now have to pay, a 280% increase. This is unsustainable. So if the Chancellor came up with the model, he certainly wasn't looking at St Albans when he came up with it. And Christo Tavalli of the Old Fighting Cocks told me that unless we have proper reform of relevant taxes, licensing laws and duty costs, his pub will be finished. And he brought this pub, and it's a beautiful historic pub. From its name, people can work out that it went back a very, very long time. And it's a beautiful historic pub, but it's cost him a huge amount of personal investment to bring it back to life. So, having pulled it back from despair, he expects that people in this House who get how important a pub is, it is not necessarily a drinking outlet. There are plenty of drinking outlets. A pub is family to some people, it's part of the community to many people, and a pub is something that once it is gone and turned into a posh house, as happens in my constituency, it will never come back. So can I put in a plea that the Minister does not hide behind all the different things that have been done? Can I just put in a plea to say it's not enough and we need to look at this again?
Toby Parker.